You know what? I have been doing this job for 17 cycles now, and I thought I had seen everything. Every possible combination of claws versus fangs, armor versus speed, brute force versus tactical genius. My name is Kralvex, senior commentator for the Galactic Combat Federation, and let me tell you something. When you have watched literally thousands of beings tear each other apart for sport and profit, you develop a certain perspective on things. But today was going to be special, and by special I mean hilariously, tragically, absurdly, one-sided. Station Gamma 7 sits in neutral space, right at the intersection of 4 major trade routes, which makes it the perfect location for what we like to call competitive violence. The arena itself is buried 3 levels underground, carved out of solid asteroid rock and reinforced with enough shielding to contain a small nuclear detonation. Trust me, we have tested that limit more than once. The fighting pit measures exactly 200 meters in diameter, with walls that rise up 30 meters on all sides. Surrounding those walls, seats for 50,000 spectators from every corner of known space, all crammed in here to watch someone's day go very, very badly. The air always smells the same down here. Blood, ozone from the energy barriers, and whatever passes for sweat among 36 different species. The lighting rigs cast everything in this harsh white glow that makes every wound look worse than it actually is, which, the crowd loves. Above the pit, massive holographic displays show close-up feeds, betting odds, fighter statistics, and instant replays of particularly gruesome moments. We spare no expense on production value. Today the crowd was absolutely electric. 48,712 paid attendees according to the official count, plus another few hundred who bribed their way past security or won their seats in preliminary fights. Forthians with their 6 arms gesturing wildly. Kilaxian diplomats in their environmental suits. Threxian miners still covered in rock dust from their shifts. Even a delegation of Centauri traders who normally considered this sort of thing beneath them. Money erases a lot of cultural differences, turns out. My co-commentator Blix sat beside me in the broadcast booth, his crystalline form refracting light in 1,000 directions as he vibrated with what I had learned to recognize as excitement. Blix is a Litharian, which means he communicates through harmonic frequencies, but our tech translates it into galactic standard for the broadcasts. He has been doing this almost as long as I have, and his enthusiasm for watching things die violently has never diminished. Honestly, it is kind of disturbing, but he brings in the younger demographic, so management loves him. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all configurations, I announced, my voice booming through the arena's speaker system. Welcome to tonight's main event, the match you have all been waiting for, the fight that has broken every pre-sale record in station history. The crowd roared. They always roar. You could announce a food service malfunction and they would probably roar. In the red corner, standing 8 feet and 4 inches tall, weighing in at 417 pounds of pure muscle and titanium-reinforced exoskeleton, the undefeated, the unstoppable, the Render himself, Throk. The eastern gate slid open with a hiss of hydraulics, and Throk emerged. And okay, I will give the crowd this one, he deserved that reaction. 47 consecutive victories. 43 of them by literal dismemberment. His exoskeleton gleamed under the lights, all burnished metal plates and cruel edges. His 4 eyes blazed with that predatory intelligence that made Krezone warriors so effective. Mandibles clicked in anticipation. The guy was basically a walking nightmare wrapped in a tank. Throk raised all 4 of his arms and flexed, and the crowd absolutely lost their minds, chanting his name, stomping their feet or tentacles or whatever, waving signs in 17 different languages. The holographic displays showed highlights from his previous fights. There was the time he crushed a Grenthian skull like an overripe fruit, the match where he threw a Voltorian clean through the energy barrier, which, according to regulations, counted as a ring out, and therefore a victory. My personal favorite was when he grabbed a Zelifan by both ends and just kept pulling until something gave way. And now, Blix chimed in, his translated voice carrying that slightly melodic quality that made everything sound vaguely sarcastic. His opponent for tonight, standing 5 feet and 4 inches tall, weighing in at 132 pounds, making her debut in the Galactic Combat Federation. Please welcome, Mira Reeves. The western gate opened, and well, there she was. You have to understand something about humans. Most of the galaxy had heard stories, sure, but very few species had actually encountered them. Earth was way out on the frontier, barely worth mentioning in most star charts. Humans had only been spacefaring for what, 200 of their years, basically yesterday in galactic terms. They had not made much of an impression yet. Small population, limited territorial claims, no significant military presence, background noise in the grand scheme of things. So when this human walked into the arena wearing standard-issue combat gear that looked 3 sizes too big for her frame, with her dark hair pulled back in a simple tail, her expression completely neutral as she surveyed the crowd, the reaction was not what she probably hoped for. First came the confused silence, then came the laughter. Oh, the laughter. It started in the upper decks and rippled downward like a wave of disbelief. 50,000 beings, all coming to the same conclusion simultaneously. This was a joke. This had to be a joke. Some kind of elaborate prank or publicity stunt. Maybe she was a hologram, some kind of comedy bit before the real fight. I checked my display screen, scrolling through the fighter registration data. Nope. This was legitimate. Mira Reeves, human female, age 26 standard years, registered weight 132, registered height 5'4", combat record. The combat record section was classified completely redacted, which was weird actually, now that I thought about it, but who cares about details when you have content this good? Blix, I said, not even trying to hide my amusement. Are we looking at what I think we are looking at? If you think we are looking at the shortest fight in arena history, Blix replied, his harmonic laughter creating little rainbow patterns across his crystalline surface, then yes, Krelvex, I believe we are on the same frequency. The betting boards updated in real time and I watched the odds shift so fast the display actually lagged. 500 to 1 against the human, then 600 to 1, then 700 to 1. People were placing absolutely massive bets on Throk, because why wouldn't they? This was free money. The arena bookmakers were probably having heart attacks trying to balance the action. Mira walked to her corner of the pit, completely ignoring the jeering crowd. She did a few simple stretches, rolled her shoulders, bounced on her toes twice. That was it. No posturing, no showboating, no attempt to intimidate her opponent or work the crowd. She just stood there waiting, like she was in line at a transport terminal instead of facing down the most dangerous gladiator in 3 sectors. Thruk, for his part, was staring at her with what I could only describe as confusion mixed with contempt. His mandibles clicked rapidly, which in Krazon body language meant something between "is this a joke?" and "I am going to enjoy this too much." He turned toward the crowd and made a dismissive gesture with one of his lower arms, which got another huge roar of approval. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, feeling that familiar pre-fight excitement building, "I think we are about to witness either the fastest victory in GCF history, or the most spectacular mismatch, since that unfortunate incident with the Quilarian and the Industrial Compactor. Place your final bets now, because in 30 seconds, this is going to be over." The crowd went absolutely ballistic. The noise was deafening, a wall of sound that made the booth soundproofing strain. Beings were on their feet, tentacles, hooves, whatever. The energy was incredible. Mira simply closed her eyes and took one long, slow breath. The referee, a Klendari with enough armor plating to survive standing between 2 fighters, raised its primary appendage. The crowd quieted just slightly, that anticipatory hush before violence. "Fighters ready," the referee announced. Throk dropped into a combat stance, all 4 arms spread wide, weight distributed perfectly, every inch the apex predator. Mira opened her eyes and looked directly at him. No fear, no excitement, nothing. Just assessment. The referee's arm dropped. "Begin." Okay. So we had a few minutes before the opening bell, and I decided to do what I always do when the pre-fight energy is this good. I grabbed my mobile recorder and headed down to the crowd for some fan reactions. Trust me, this was going to be premium content. First stop, Section 12, where a group of Vorthian merchants were practically falling over each other with laughter. Vorthians, if you do not know, have 6 arms and absolutely 0 sense of personal space. They are also notorious gamblers, which makes them my favorite interview subjects. "Gentlemen," I called out, pushing through the crowd with my press credentials doing the heavy lifting. "Krelvex, GCF Network. Quick question for the audience. What are your thoughts on tonight's matchup?" The largest Vorthian, wearing what looked like very expensive trade guild insignia, grabbed my recording device with 3 of his hands simultaneously while gesturing wildly with the other 3. Thoughts? Krelvex, my friend, this is not a matchup. This is a public execution. We have bet our entire cargo shipment, 17,000 credits worth of Centauri spice, on Throck winning in under 30 seconds. His companions erupted into wheezing laughter that sounded like airlocks malfunctioning. Under 30 seconds, I said, playing it up for the camera. That seems oddly specific. Have you seen her? Another Vorthian chimed in, wiping tears from his eye stalks. I have seen larger appetizers. My hatchlings have more mass than this human. 30 seconds is generous. We are being generous. 20 seconds. 15. Throck is going to sneeze and accidentally kill her. They all dissolved into another fit of laughter, slapping each other's backs and arms in that chaotic way Vorthians do when they think something is peak comedy. I thanked them and moved on, but honestly, they had a point. The size difference was absolutely absurd. Next up, I spotted a cluster of station security officers near the north barrier. These guys had the best view in the house and the worst job if things went sideways. I squeezed through and got their attention. Officers, Kralvex, GCF Network. How are we feeling about safety protocols tonight? The lead officer, a grizzled Kelthoran with more scars than scales, just shook his head slowly. We have got the cleanup crew on standby, full biohazard team, maybe a mop. Honestly, I am more worried about the psychological trauma for the first row spectators when that human gets turned into a fine mist. You think it will be that bad? I asked, knowing full well the answer but wanting it on record. Kralvex. I have worked arena security for 9 years. I have seen beings get crushed, torn apart, dissolved, incinerated, and one memorable incident involving a singularity projector that we do not talk about. But this, he gestured toward the pit where Mira was now doing some kind of weird stretching routine. This is just sad, man. Someone should have stopped this before it got approved. I do not care what her registration paperwork says. There is no universe where this ends well for her. His partner, a younger Threxian, nodded enthusiastically. We have got body bag duty after this. Already drew straws. I lost. Do you know how hard it is to scrape human remains off reinforced asteroid rock? 'Cause I am about to find out. They both laughed, but it was that dark, gallows humor that security types develop. I could not really blame them. From where they stood, this looked like assisted suicide with extra steps. I made my way over to the medical station, where the arena's emergency response team was prepping their equipment. The head medic, a 6-limbed Quarian named Velmoth, was calibrating a regeneration tank while muttering to herself. Doc! I called out. Got a minute for the press? She looked up, her compound eyes reflecting annoyance. Make it quick, Kralvex. We are going to be very busy very soon. Confident about the outcome then, Velmoth gestured to the 3 regeneration tanks she had prepared, all powered up and humming. We have got full regeneration capability standing by. Rapid response trauma kits, genetic reconstruction protocols loaded, and I personally checked the molecular reassembly matrix twice. When Throck gets done with that human, we are going to need every bit of this technology just to identify what species she used to be. That bad? Kralvex. I have regenerated fighters who went through industrial shredders. I once reconstructed a Valtorian from a sample the size of my smallest claw. But you need something to work with. You understand? You need biological material. If Throck hits her with full force, she made a gesture that I think meant vaporized in Quarian sign language. We might just be cleaning up a scorch mark and filing paperwork. Back in the broadcast booth, Blix was having the time of his life. He had pulled up Throck's highlight reel and was doing dramatic play-by-play commentary for the crowd on the big screens. And here we see Throck facing off against Grindix the Bone Crusher, a Selenite champion with 9 previous victories. Watch as Throck grabs him by the upper torso and, oh no, and he just keeps pulling. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a Selenite being literally ripped in half. Note the symmetry. Note the technique. That is 47 pounds of warrior being separated into 2 23.5-pound pieces. The crowd was eating it up, cheering at the replays of extreme violence like it was the greatest entertainment in the galaxy. Which, to be fair, it kind of was. Say what you want about the ethics of bloodsport, but you cannot argue with the ratings. And this beauty, Blix continued, switching to another clip. Throck versus the Valtorian speedfighter Zexnor. Now Zexnor was fast, folks, clocked at 60 meters per second in open terrain. But watch what happens when Throck simply grabs him mid-dodge and, uses him as a projectile weapon. Zexnor went completely through the energy barrier, traveled another 40 meters and embedded himself in a support column. The match was ruled a ring out, but I think we can all agree the spirit of victory was achieved. Meanwhile, down in the pit, Mira had finished her stretches and was now just standing in her corner, not pacing, not psyching herself up, not even watching Throk, who was playing to the crowd like he had already won. She just stood there, hands at her sides, breathing normally, staring at nothing in particular. A few people in the crowd started throwing things. Nothing dangerous, just garbage and food containers, the usual pre-fight nonsense. A crumpled betting slip bounced off her shoulder. She did not even blink. "Look at her," someone shouted from the upper decks. "She does not even have the sense to be afraid. Maybe humans do not have fear responses." Another voice called out, "Maybe they are just really, really stupid." More laughter, more jeering. The noise built and built until it was this constant wall of mockery and anticipation. I climbed back into the booth and settled into my seat, checking my notes one more time. "Blix, my friend, I think we are about to witness something that will be talked about for years. The fastest knockout in GCF history." Blix agreed, his form practically vibrating with excitement. "Exactly. Now let us make sure we get every angle. I want slow motion, thermal imaging, the works. This is going to be spectacular." Down in the pit, the referee was making final checks. Throk was cracking his knuckles, all 4 sets of them, the sound echoing through the arena like gunshots. And Mira just closed her eyes and took one long, slow breath. The betting boards updated one final time, 800 to 1 against the human. This was going to be glorious. The bell rang, and Throk did exactly what everyone expected him to do. He charged. Now, when I say charged, I mean he launched himself forward with every ounce of his 417-pound frame. All that muscle and titanium plating moving at speeds that should not be possible for something that size. The impact sensors embedded in the pit floor registered the force, and the readouts on my display spiked into the red zone. This was not a tactical approach. This was not a measured opening. This was a freight train deciding that the quickest way to end this farce was to simply run straight through the obstacle. The crowd noise hit a crescendo, 50,000 beings screaming for blood, and I was already preparing my commentary for the inevitable splatter. I had my finger hovering over the slow-motion replay controls because this was going to need frame-by-frame analysis for the highlight reels. The throat closed the distance in under 2 seconds. Arms spread wide to grab, crush or pulverize depending on what he could reach first. His mandibles were open in what passed for a Krazon war cry. His eyes were locked on target. Everything about his approach was perfect. Textbook aggression from a fighter who had done this 47 times before and won every single time. Mira moved. No, wait. Moved is not the right word. Moving implies effort, implies action, implies some kind of dramatic physical exertion. What Mira did was somehow be in a different place than where she had been standing, and it happened so subtly, so economically, that my brain took a full second to register that anything had occurred at all. 1 microsecond she was directly in Throk's path. The next microsecond she was 45 degrees to the left, and Throk was still moving forward at full speed with nothing in front of him except 30 meters of empty space and then a reinforced wall. Oh no, I thought. Oh no. The sound was incredible. Not loud, exactly, but wrong in a way that made every being in the arena flinch simultaneously. Throk's face, protected by his exoskeleton but not quite protected enough, met the wall with the full force of his charge. Metal met stone. Stone won, and the resulting impact sent a spider web of cracks radiating out from the impact point. The acoustic sensors picked up the crunch and broadcast it through the arena's speaker system in perfect clarity. And trust me, nobody wanted that level of detail. The crowd's roar died, not gradually, not tapering off, but just stopped, like someone had hit a mute button on 50,000 voices simultaneously. Throk staggered backward, shaking his head, blue blood streaming from somewhere around his mandibles. His exoskeleton had a visible dent in it now right across the forehead section, and I could see his eyes trying to refocus. To his credit, he recovered fast. Krazon warriors are not champions because they are fragile. He spun around, located Mira, who had barely moved from her new position, and the confusion on his face was replaced by something much more dangerous. Rage. Pure unfiltered ego-wounded rage. Blix, I said quietly, suddenly very aware that my commentary had stopped. Did that really happen? Replay confirms, Blix responded, and I could hear the uncertainty in his translated voice. Subject Mira executed a lateral movement at time index 0.03 seconds before impact. Movement velocity suggests minimal energy expenditure. Throk's trajectory remained unchanged. Throk roared, and this time there was nothing performative about it. This was a fighter who had just been embarrassed in front of 50,000 people and was about to make someone pay for it. He launched into a combination attack that I had seen him use to demolish opponents before. High strike with the right upper arm to force a defensive reaction. Low sweep with the left lower arm to catch the dodge. Middle grab with both middle arms to trap and crush. It was brutally effective, covering multiple buffers of escape, executed with speed that made his earlier charge look slow. Mira's response was to not be where any of those strikes landed. I am not talking about dodging here. Dodging is when you see an attack coming and move away from it. This was different. This was Mira being in the spaces between Throk's attacks, flowing around his limbs like water around rocks. And I genuinely could not tell if she was reacting to what he was doing or if she somehow knew what he was going to do before he did it. Throk's high strike hit air. His sweep hit air. His grab closed on nothing. And for just a fraction of a second he was overextended, committed to attacks that had not connected, and Mira was suddenly inside his guard. She moved her arm maybe 6 inches. Maybe. It did not look like much. It looked like she was tapping him like a polite gesture to get someone's attention at a social gathering. The sound that echoed through the arena was a gunshot. Sharp, percussive, impossibly loud for something that came from such a small movement. Throk's left knee joint. The complicated bit of engineering where his exoskeleton had to articulate and therefore could not be as heavily armored, suddenly bent in a direction that knees are not supposed to bend. I saw it happen. The replay confirmed it happened, but my brain still could not quite process how such a small strike had generated enough force to compromise reinforced titanium. Throk's leg buckled, and he dropped maybe 3 inches before his training kicked in and he shifted his weight to compensate. But that was 3 inches of vulnerability, 3 inches of Mira having the higher ground, 3 inches of opportunity. Her hand moved again, barely visible, striking upward at Throk's right elbow socket. Another gunshot. Another joint that suddenly was not functioning according to manufacturer specifications. Throk's upper right arm went limp, dangling uselessly, and I could see the shock registering on his face. Not pain yet. Pain comes later when the adrenaline wears off. That shock that his body was not responding the way it should. He tried to create distance, tried to reset his stance, tried to do anything that would give him space to reassess. Mira stayed with him, matching his backward movement step for step, and her hand moved one more time. This strike went to his neck, right at the cluster of vertebrae where the Krazon nervous system was most concentrated. I watched it happen in real time and then I watched it again on the replay, and even with frame-by-frame analysis I could not fully comprehend the precision involved. She threaded her strike between 2 plates of exoskeleton that had maybe a 1/4-inch gap between them, and when her fingers made contact with his spine the third gunshot rang out. Throk's entire right side locked up, just stopped working. His arm froze mid-movement, his leg went rigid, and his mandibles clicked spasmodically. Partial neural disruption, my medical readouts helpfully informed me, as if I needed a computer to tell me that something had gone catastrophically wrong with the champion's ability to control his own body. Total time elapsed since the opening bell, 4.7 seconds. The arena was silent, completely, absolutely, utterly silent. 50,000 beings, every single one of them holding their breath, trying to process what they were watching. The betting boards had frozen, unable to calculate odds for a scenario they had not been programmed to handle. Down in the pit, Throk was struggling to stay upright, 3/4 of his limbs functioning at partial capacity, blue blood dripping from multiple locations, his breathing labored and wrong-sounding. He was still dangerous, still capable of fighting, still the undefeated champion. But he was not winning. For the first time in 47 fights, Throk the Render was not winning. Mira stood 3 meters away, her breathing still calm and even, her expression unchanged, her stance relaxed. She had not said a word, had not celebrated, had not even acknowledged that she had just done something impossible. She was just waiting. Waiting for round 2. I finally found my voice, though it came out as barely a whisper that the broadcast equipment had to amplify. What? What are we watching? Blix did not answer. For once in his career, my co-commentator had absolutely nothing to say. In the pit, Throk roared again, but this time, underneath the rage and the pain and the determination I heard something else. Fear. Okay, so, here is the thing about being a professional commentator. You develop certain scripts, certain patterns of speech, that carry you through a fight. excitement phrases for when the action gets good, technical analysis for the slower moments, dramatic build-up for the finish. I had been doing this for 17 cycles, and I had never, not once, found myself completely unable to describe what I was watching. Until now. Thruk is, he is regrouping, I managed, and even I could hear how pathetic that sounded. The champion is, he is adjusting his strategy. Clearly, he is taking a more measured approach now after that, unexpected opening exchange. Unexpected opening exchange. Right. That was like calling a shuttle crash an unexpected landing. Thruk was not regrouping, Thruk was broken. 3 of his forearms were barely functional. His right leg was locked in partial extension, and his exoskeleton had stress fractures visible from my booth 50 meters away, but he was still standing. And credit where credit is due, he was still trying to fight. He switched to his tail, that thick muscular appendage that Krazan warriors use as a backup weapon when everything else fails. The tail swipe came fast, horizontal arc at chest height, with enough force behind it to decapitate most species. It was actually a smart move, using his one remaining fully functional weapon, maximizing reach while minimizing exposure. Thruk might have been losing, but he was not stupid. Mira dropped underneath it so smoothly that it looked choreographed, like they had practiced this routine together. The tail passed through the space where her head had been maybe a tenth of a second earlier, and she was already moving forward, inside his defense again, and her hands reached up and grabbed his left lower arm at the wrist and elbow. What happened next made me physically ill, and I have watched people die in this arena. She twisted. Not dramatically, not with visible strain, just a simple rotational movement that used his own arm's weight and momentum against itself. Leverage my brain supplied uselessly. She is using basic leverage principles. The joint gave way with a sound like breaking ceramics, and Thruk's arm bent backward at an angle that would have been funny in a cartoon but was absolutely horrifying in real life. The champion screamed, actually screamed. I had never heard a Krazan make that sound before. Several experienced fighters in the front rows looked away. A Kelthoran veteran in Section 7 actually got up and left. The Vorthian merchants from earlier were not laughing anymore. In fact, the largest one, the one who had bet his entire cargo shipment, was clutching his chest with 3 hands while the other 3 gripped the railing in front of him like he was trying to prevent himself from falling into a pit. His eye stalks had gone completely pale, which, for Vorthians, indicated either shock or the onset of cardiac arrest. Blix, I said quietly off mic. Search the database. Everything we have on humans. Combat records. Military assessments. Anything. I could hear the crystalline clicking that meant Blix was processing frantically. Searching now. Pulling all available files on species designation human. Origin planet Earth. Terran system. Thruk tried to create distance again, hopping backward on his one good leg using his tail for balance. Mira followed. Not rushing. Not aggressive. Just maintaining position like she was his shadow. He threw a wild haymaker with his one remaining functional arm, putting everything he had left into it. Mira stepped inside the punch, let it pass over her shoulder, and delivered a palm strike to his chest plate. The crack was audible throughout the entire arena. Not a gunshot this time, but the sound of expensive military-grade armor failing structural integrity tests. A spider web of fractures spread across Thruk's chest, and I saw him stagger backward, his breathing suddenly ragged and desperate. That exoskeleton was not just for protection, it was load-bearing, helping support his massive frame, compromise it enough, and his own weight became a weapon against him. Kralvex, Blix said, and there was something in his translated voice I had never heard before. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. I am finding classified files, multiple classified files, military intelligence warnings about human combat capabilities. These were flagged for command-level review only. What do they say? I asked, watching Mira circle Thruk like a predator with all the time in the world. They say, oh no, they say humans are not cleared for standard combat classifications. They say human military personnel should be treated as hazardous materials. There are warnings here about something called persistence hunting and endurance physiology and pattern recognition capabilities that exceed galactic norms by factors of 3 to 8, depending on. Hold on, I am still reading. Blix, summary, give me a summary. The summary is that someone in the registration office did not read the warnings. The summary is that humans are apparently terrifying and nobody told us. My communicator started buzzing, then it started screaming. I pulled it out and saw 17 urgent messages from arena management, All sent in the last 30 seconds. I opened the most recent one. Stop the fight now. Liability issues. Stop the fight. Yeah, good luck with that. The referee was still in the pit, technically, but he had backed himself against the wall and was making no moves to intervene. Nobody was stopping anything. This was happening whether management liked it or not. In the VIP section I could see the arena owner, a Centauri businessman named Vexelin, screaming into his communicator while his assistants frantically scrolled through what looked like insurance documents. His face had gone through several colors and was currently settling on a shade of purple that suggested his species equivalent of a panic attack. Our premiums, I heard him shriek, his voice carrying through the silent arena. Do you have any idea what this is going to do to our premiums? Meanwhile, down in the pit, Mira had closed distance again. Throke tried to bite her, mandibles snapping down with enough force to sever limbs. She moved her head maybe 2 inches to the side and his mandibles closed on empty air. Then her hand moved, striking the joint where his mandibles connected to his jaw, and one of them just stopped working, hanging loose and useless. The methodical nature of it was the worst part. If she had been aggressive, brutal, violent, that would have been one thing, but she was not. She was clinical. She was precise. She was approaching this the same way a maintenance worker approaches a piece of malfunctioning equipment, systematically identifying each component and disabling it in sequence. Strike to the hip joint. Throke's movement became a hobble. Strike to the shoulder socket. His remaining functional arm dropped by half its range of motion. Strike to the base of his tail. The backup weapon went limp. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, and my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. I think we are witnessing something that has never happened in the history of the Galactic Combat Federation. Throke the Render. 47 victories, undefeated champion, he is being systematically. I could not say it, could not say the word, because saying it would make it real, and if it was real then everything I knew about combat sports, about fighter classifications, about the entire hierarchy of the galactic combat scene, was wrong. Dismantled. Blix finished for me, his voice quiet. He is being dismantled. The crowd was still silent. 50,000 beings, not a single voice raised. Everyone watching in frozen horror as their champion, their unstoppable champion, was taken apart piece by someone who looked like she should have been crushed in the first 3 seconds. Throck dropped to one knee, then to both knees. His breathing was labored, wet sounding, blue blood pooled beneath him. His exoskeleton was cracked in at least 15 places that I could see. All 4 arms were non-functional. His tail was paralyzed. His mandibles hung loose. And Mira stood 2 meters away, still breathing normally, still showing no emotion, watching him struggle to stay conscious. The medical team was already moving toward the pit entrance, but slowly, hesitantly, like they were approaching a dangerous chemical spill rather than a standard post-fight cleanup. I checked the fight timer. 9 minutes and 43 seconds. In less than 10 minutes everything I thought I knew about this profession had been turned inside out. Blix, I said, pull up her registration again. Tell me what we missed. Combat record, classified. Training history, classified. Planet of origin combat assessments, classified. Krulvex, her entire file is redacted except for basic biometrics. Who approved her for standard competition? Registration clerk named Thexmore. Junior position. Probably did not have clearance to view the classified sections. He saw the weight class, saw the size, rubber stamped it for approval. That clerk was going to be looking for a new job. Assuming he survived the lawsuits, Throck made one last attempt to stand, got halfway up and fell forward. He was not unconscious yet, but he was close. Mira watched him fall, tilted her head slightly like she was considering something, and then looked up at the referee. The referee, who had been frozen against the wall for the last 9 minutes, slowly raised his primary appendage. Medical intervention required. Pause. He did not get to finish. Because Throck, with what must have been the last reserves of strength in his broken body, lunged. I do not know where Throck found the strength. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was just the absolute refusal to go down without landing at least one hit on the being who had destroyed his legacy in under 10 minutes. But somehow, with 3 broken limbs, a compromised exoskeleton, and enough internal damage to kill most species twice over, he pushed himself forward one last time. It was not elegant. It was not tactical. It was desperation given physical form. A last-ditch lunge with his one partially functional arm extended, claws out, aiming for anything he could reach. Center mass, probably, just trying to make contact, to prove that he had not been completely helpless, that he had fought back. Mira caught his wrist mid-strike, just reached out and stopped 417 pounds of momentum like she was catching a thrown ball. Her fingers wrapped around his wrist. Her stance shifted maybe 6 inches, and Throke's entire lunge just stopped, completely, instantly. The physics of it should not have worked. The mass differential alone should have carried them both backward, but there she was, holding him in place, and I could see the confusion register on his face one final time. Then she moved. It was a pivot, a rotation of her entire body, using his forward momentum against him, redirecting his vector from horizontal to vertical. She dropped her weight, turned her hips, and suddenly Throck was not lunging anymore. He was flying, actually flying. All 417 pounds of him lifted clear off the ground, rotating through the air in an arc that carried him up, and I watched his trajectory peak at about 3 meters off the pit floor. For one frozen instant, Throck the Render, 47-time champion, was suspended in midair, completely helpless, and the entire arena collectively held its breath. Then gravity remembered it had a job to do. Mira was already moving, her body following through on the throw, positioning herself directly beneath his falling trajectory. Her right arm pulled back, chambering a strike, and as Throck began his descent, she drove her palm upward with every ounce of force her frame could generate. The impact point was center mass, right where his chest plate exoskeleton was already fractured from her earlier strikes. 417 pounds of falling Krazan warrior met human physics moving in the opposite direction, and the resulting collision was so catastrophic that my brain initially refused to process it. The sound was not a crack or a crunch or even a crash. It was a wet, crunching implosion, the sound of structural integrity failing on every level simultaneously. Throck's exoskeleton did not just break, it compressed, folding inward like cheap aluminum, the reinforced titanium plating collapsing into his body cavity. I saw it happen. The replay later confirmed it happened, but even watching it multiple times, I could not quite accept what my eyes were telling me. In 17 cycles of commentating arena combat, I had seen a lot of ways for beings to die, but I had never seen someone get compacted. Not like this. Not so thoroughly that the impact crater in the pit floor was deeper than the body lying in it. Throck hit the ground, and then he stopped being a recognizable shape. His exoskeleton, his skeleton, everything that had been supporting his structure, just gave up. The medical readouts on my display went from critical to flatline in under half a second. No gradual decline, no final struggles, just alive and then very, very not alive. The medical team rushed in, regeneration equipment already activated, but I could see the lead medic, Velmoth, stop halfway to the impact site. She stood there staring, and even from my booth I could see her compound eyes widening. She looked at her equipment, looked at what was left of Throck, looked at her equipment again, and then slowly powered everything down. There was nothing to regenerate. You need biological material to regenerate. You need structural integrity. You need something to work with. Mira stood up, stepped over the crater and walked toward the western exit. No celebration, no acknowledgement of the crowd, no raising of arms in victory, or playing to the cameras. She just walked, her breathing still even, her expression still neutral, like she had just finished a routine training exercise instead of killing the most dangerous fighter in 3 sectors. The referee finally found his voice. Winner by. He looked down at the crater, looked at Mira's departing back, looked at his display panel like it might provide guidance. Winner by fatality. Mira re. Nobody cheered, nobody booed, nobody made a sound. The betting boards tried to process the outcome, odds calculations running in reverse, trying to figure out how to pay out on 800-to-1 long shots that had somehow hit. The displays flickered, glitched, showed error messages, flickered again. Half of them just gave up and went dark. The arena's computer systems had not been programmed for this scenario because this scenario was not supposed to be possible. Mira reached the exit gate, which opened automatically, and disappeared into the access tunnel without looking back. The gate closed behind her with a soft hiss of hydraulics, and she was gone. I sat in my booth, holding my microphone in one hand, staring at the pit below, at the crater, at the medical team standing around it like mourners at a funeral, unsure of what they were even supposed to do, at the crowd of 50,000 beings, every single one of them sitting in stunned silence. Blix had not said a word for the last 2 minutes. His crystalline form had stopped refracting light, gone dull and matte, which I had learned meant he was processing something his consciousness could not quite handle. My communicator was exploding with messages. Arena management, broadcast network executives, gambling commission officials, insurance adjusters, legal teams, everyone wanting answers, wanting explanations, wanting someone to tell them how this had happened. I did not have answers. I had been here. I had watched every second of it, and I still did not understand what I had witnessed. Blix, I finally said, my voice barely audible. What do we tell them? My co-commentator's form flickered, refracting a single shaft of light that created a brief rainbow across the booth controls. When he spoke, his translated voice was quiet, almost reverent. We tell them the truth, Krovex. We tell them that we have been placing bets and scheduling fights in a galaxy where humans exist, and we did not even know what that meant. We tell them that somewhere right now there are probably hundreds more beings just like her, walking around, looking harmless, and nobody is paying attention. We tell them that the weight class system is broken, that the combat classification system is broken, that everything we thought we knew about competitive violence just became obsolete in under 11 minutes. I looked down at the crater one more time. The cleanup crew had arrived with equipment designed for standard post-fight cleanup. They stood around the impact site, looking at their tools, then at the crater, clearly calculating whether they were qualified for this particular job. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into my microphone, my voice carrying through the silent arena, thank you for attending tonight's event. Please exit in an orderly fashion, and maybe rethink some of your assumptions about the universe. It was the worst sign-off of my entire career. It was also the only honest thing I could say. The crowd began to move, slowly, quietly, filing out of the arena like people leaving a funeral. The Vorthian merchants walked past my booth, and I could see that the largest one was crying, all 6 arms wrapped around himself in what looked like existential despair. His cargo shipment was gone, but I think he had lost something more important than credits tonight. I powered down my equipment, packed up my notes, and took one last look at the pit. The crater was still there, a permanent reminder that we had all been wrong about something very, very important. Somewhere in the access tunnels, Mira Reeves was probably already changing out of her combat gear, getting ready to collect her winnings, planning her next match or maybe just her next meal, going about her day like she had not just rewritten the rules of an entire industry. And the truly terrifying part, she had made it look easy. I left the booth and headed for the exit, my legs feeling unsteady, my mind still trying to process everything. Behind me, the lights in the arena began to dim, the automated systems shutting down for the night. In the darkness, the crater remained, a testament to the fact that the galaxy was bigger, stranger, and more dangerous than any of us had realized, and humanity had just announced its arrival.